So I wanted to talk about sort of science commenters. I find it really interesting, actually. If I see these, there's a whole genre of them, particularly on YouTube. There's some really, and they're really great. I like them. The sort of classic ones were always on PBS and things like that. Many people got into science because of these sort of science commenters or reporters or whatever. And like I'm forgetting of their names, but there's a whole bunch of them that sort of pay attention to science and then they talk about it. But the thing is it's interesting, right? Like they might have a master's, the odd person has a PhD that does it, but not that many. But what I see is a tremendous amount of surety in how they comment on it and the things that they actually talk about. Um, for the most part, if you talk to scientists and researchers in any given area, they're really unsure. They really don't know. There are some sort of basic facts that they understand, the sort of general principles, general models of how things work, but like specific things, like how many people happened, how many people died doing this thing, um, how many, you know, what is the actual number of this particular thing? Most people don't know. Most scientists and researchers don't have a really good definitive number, and so they're really sketchy about it, right? Like they'll kind of dodge it, and a lot of times they'll say like this is the mean number that we know of, this is the average number that we know of, but it could vary anywhere between this and this. That would be a real scientific answer, um, and they might give you some sort of bands on how much of that there might be of this particular number. They're really cagey, right? And the reason is that often we don't really have a good definitive number, and that's where I think like science commenters get this really wrong. And they sort of describe the reality in a discrete sense, right? Like everything is discrete, so meaning like it chops off, and there's a one thing, then the next thing, but in reality, we really don't have our world is not discrete. It's continuously changing. Anybody that is doing research will know that's very fluid. It's always changing. There's always something new. We're always getting updated, and we really don't have a good sense of things. And then the other thing is even if it wasn't changing, right? We're trying to assemble across multiple pieces of information that are really just sketching on a particular phenomenon. We saw this like during the COVID pandemic when people were trying to figure this stuff out, what was going on, the science of it, and it was kind of very much, they called it evolving, right? But it was just sketchy. We didn't know. And I tend to err on the conservative side in the sense of, for safety, making sure people, like things like that. And so I took a lot longer to sort of adjust to some of the sort of norms that we have today. It's 2022. But still, I'm very skeptical until we get more concrete understanding. Um, but that takes forever, right? Like, and then the thing is, we don't ever have a concrete understanding of the world. Um, we don't definitively know, or it's hard to definitively know, even with, I mean, you look at it. So you might do something, you might think, well, yeah, you could do randomized controlled trials. Okay, so you do one, but that scientific study could be flawed, even if it's a randomized controlled trial, or, an outlying, randomized controlled trial, for example, or experiment. There's so much sort of softness and wiggle room that would have to take boatloads of studies and like just an infinite number of studies to convince somebody of a particular fact. And even still, it is evolving. And there will still be a lot of people that will be very skeptical about certain facts. But given that, right, given that it's a stochastic in nature, right, we're always kind of figuring things out and it's evolving, um, we have a sense as scientists and researchers what is the right answer. So, we sort of gravitate probabilistically towards the right answers, kind of sort of Bayesian updating approach. Sometimes people say that, where you use your hunches and given available information to sort of predict the future. And we have sort of uh, a probabilistic understanding of where that is. And so, um, for me, I have a pretty good understanding of things, but I'm not concrete, right? Like I will never sort of say, oh yeah, this is the right answer. But there's some things that I'm pretty confident about at this point. Things like just slow, steady growth for a company, for example, is is ideal, right? Like rapid growth can lead to some not so great phenomenon, although that there's not a lot of studies on this, right? But I just have a real good hunch about it. And of course, if there was information that said otherwise, I would update that and sort of suggest like nuances, right? And it's normally like nuances. Um, so what I would suggest is just keep going, right? Like, um, realize that those normally I'm giving so much encouragement. I was just thinking in my head, I was like, that's kind of a weird thing to say. I give so much encouragement, but um, and just realize that the world is really fuzzy, and these science commenters, they're not real scientists, so they're not in this state of it. And then the other thing you'll realize is that they have this unbelievable knowledge across the board of so many different things. That's because they're sort of reading scripts, right? And they don't know as much as you think that they actually know. And so just be careful with it. I'm not saying like discount them, but just know it's kind of like pop culture science. And there's a difference between real science and pop culture science. All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.